My beloved child, last night something happened that no one expected, and the silence surrounding it felt heavier than any words that had been spoken before. A room that had been filled with casual conversation suddenly changed when your person stopped talking, lowered their eyes, and held on to a thought they had hidden for far too long. Their friends noticed it right away. The pause, the hesitation, the way their face changed as if they were standing on the edge of saying something that could no longer remain buried. One of them quietly asked what was wrong, but the answer did not come immediately. The atmosphere became still. Even the smallest sounds around them seemed far away because in that moment, something inside your person was caught between fear and truth. They had carried this feeling in silence, pretending they were unaffected, pretending nothing had changed, pretending your name no longer moved through their mind when no one else was around. And then, with a voice softer than anyone expected, they finally said it. I'm finally ready to admit this. Those words alone changed the room because their friends understood right away that what was about to come next was something they had tried many times. To deny something they had hidden even from themselves, something that had stayed locked behind pride, confusion, and delay. Do not skip, because what happened after that sentence revealed more than anyone around them imagined. Stay until the end, because something important is waiting for you inside this moment. They leaned back, breathed out slowly, and for a moment it looked as though they might stop speaking once again. But this time they continued because once truth begins to speak, it refuses to return quietly to silence. They admitted that every distraction had failed. Every effort to move on had led them back to the same memory. Every conversation with someone else eventually felt empty because deep inside one name kept returning. Your presence, your energy, your absence, all of it. They said they had tried to convince themselves that time would erase everything, but time only made things clearer. Their closest friend looked shocked, because this was the first time they had spoken with complete honesty. Until last night, they had always acted certain, always appeared composed, always answered questions with half-truths and unfinished explanations. But last night there was no performance left. They confessed that some nights had become longer than expected because thoughts they never planned to revisit kept arriving without warning. Certain words you once spoke had returned with exact detail. Certain moments they believed were forgotten had become impossible to ignore. They admitted that even ordinary things had started reminding them of what they once felt but never fully accepted. Then one friend asked the question that changed everything again. So, why are you saying it now? The answer came slowly, because something had shifted recently, because silence no longer felt safe, because pretending had become heavier than admitting the truth, because they realized that some feelings do not disappear simply because they are delayed. Do not skip, because this is where everything became deeper than anyone expected. They explained that lately they had been noticing how often your memory returned during unexpected moments, during normal hours, during quiet evenings, during conversations that had nothing to do with you. It happened without warning. And every time it happened, it brought the same uncomfortable realization. What they had buried was still alive. One friend tried to interrupt, but your person continued, almost as if they feared losing courage if they stopped. They admitted they had watched other people move comfortably through life while they remained emotionally unfinished inside. They admitted that some part of them had stayed connected to something unresolved, something they had never clearly named until now. Then came the sentence that left everyone silent once again. They said they were afraid that by the time they understood what was true, the opportunity to say it might already be gone. That sentence changed the mood completely because now this was no longer just a confession. It was regret beginning to speak. Stay until the end, because something important is waiting for you. And this next part carries a weight that even they were not prepared to reveal. One friend asked whether they had ever truly let go. The answer was immediate this time. No. No hesitation, no confusion, just one honest word. And that single word said more than every previous silence combined. They admitted that they had hidden behind distance because admitting attachment felt dangerous. They convinced themselves that if they remained silent, emotions would fade naturally. But instead of fading, everything became sharper over time. They remembered conversations they never expected to remember. Small details that no one else would understand. The way certain moments remained bright while other memories disappeared. It unsettled them because it proved that some connections leave marks deeper than pride can erase. Then they admitted something else, something they had not planned to say. They said there were times they almost reached out, times they almost broke their own silence, times they opened a message and stared at it without sending anything. Their friends looked at one another because this was the first sign that what they felt had remained active far longer than anyone realized. Do not skip. The deeper truth had still not arrived because after saying all this, they became quiet again. Then they finally admitted what had truly been sitting underneath everything. They were no longer certain whether hiding their feelings had protected them or cost them something valuable. That sentence remained in the room like a heavy weight. No one answered immediately because everyone understood that once someone reaches that realization, something inside them has already started to change. And perhaps that is why last night mattered more than any night before, because last night was not only a confession, it was the beginning of emotional honesty after a long season of avoidance. Stay until the end because something important is waiting for you. The moment that followed revealed that even they were surprised by what came out next. One friend asked quietly, "If you had the chance right now, what would you say?" Your person looked away, smiled faintly in a way that carried both sadness and hope, and answered, "I would say the truth should have been spoken sooner." Then silence returned. But this time silence meant that everyone understood a hidden door inside them had finally opened. What happened after that silence was even more unexpected because no one in that room believed your person would continue. But they did, and this time their voice carried the kind of truth that only appears when someone has stopped protecting their own pride. They looked at their friends and admitted that for a very long time they had tried to explain their feelings in ways that sounded logical. But none of those explanations ever matched what was truly happening inside. They said the truth was much simpler and much harder. No matter how much they tried to move forward mentally, something inside them kept returning to the same unfinished place. One friend leaned closer and one friend asked whether this feeling had become stronger recently. Your person did not answer immediately. They took a breath, paused, and then nodded in a way that said more than words ever could. That small gesture made everyone in the room realize this was not a passing thought. This was something that had been growing quietly for longer than anyone knew. Do not skip, because what they revealed next changed the entire conversation. They admitted there had been nights when they suddenly remembered details they thought had disappeared long ago. Specific words, certain expressions, quiet moments that seemed ordinary at the time, but now felt impossible to forget. It surprised even them, because they had not invited those memories back. They arrived on their own, as if something inside refused to allow the connection to disappear completely. Then one friend asked carefully, "Did you ever tell yourself it was over?" Your person gave a faint smile, but it was the kind of smile people show when they know they had been pretending. They said yes, many times. They had told themselves it was finished. They had told themselves enough time had passed. They had told themselves silence meant closure. But every time they believed that, something small happened that broke the illusion once again. A familiar thought, a random memory, a feeling they could not explain, and suddenly everything they claimed was over felt unfinished again. Stay until the end, because something important is waiting for you. The next sentence surprised even their closest friends. They admitted that recently they had started noticing how often they compared ordinary moments to something they once felt but never fully understood until now. They said they had met people, spoken with others, filled their days with distractions, but none of it carried the same quiet impact. That confession changed the room because now this was no longer about memory. It was about realization. One friend asked the question everyone had been thinking. So, are you saying you never stopped feeling something? Your person looked straight ahead and answered softly, maybe I stopped saying it, but I never stopped carrying it. That sentence left everyone silent once again, because those words carried a truth too deep to hide behind explanations. For the first time, they were no longer speaking about what happened in the past. They were speaking about what still existed in the present, and everyone in that room understood it. The conversation continued long into the night, but nothing that followed carried more weight than that moment. Because once someone admits what they have been carrying in silence, the burden changes. It no longer lives only inside their mind. It becomes real. It becomes visible. It becomes impossible to ignore. And perhaps that is the message hidden inside this story. Some feelings disappear. Some memories fade. Some connections slowly lose their meaning. But some things remain even when people spend months or years trying to convince themselves otherwise. What your person admitted last night was not weakness, it was not confusion, it was not a temporary emotion, it was honesty. The kind of honesty that arrives after every excuse has failed, the kind of honesty that appears when avoidance no longer works, the kind of honesty that finally says what the heart has known for a very long time. And whether they are ready to act on it or not, whether they know what happens next or not, one thing became clear last night. They can no longer pretend they feel nothing. Because the truth has already been spoken. And once truth is spoken, it has a way of changing everything that comes after it. The words were simply too truthful to ignore. Do not skip ahead. This next moment was where everything became impossible to deny. A friend who had been listening quietly until that point finally asked why they had hidden it for so long if the feeling was still there. The answer came more slowly this time, almost as if every word had to be carefully brought up from somewhere deep inside. They said, sometimes people hide the truth because speaking it out loud makes it real. And once it becomes real, you have to face what you postponed, what you misunderstood, and what you may have nearly lost by staying silent for too long. That answer made even the strongest voice in the room fall silent because everyone understood that your person was no longer speaking casually. They were speaking from a place they had avoided for a very long time. Then, another unexpected confession followed. They admitted there had been moments recently when they almost reached out, almost broke the silence, almost chose honesty. But every single time they stopped themselves because they did not know whether the moment still belonged to them. Stay until the end because something important is waiting for you. What they admitted after that carried even greater weight. They said the hardest part was realizing that feelings can stay quiet without disappearing. They do not always announce themselves loudly. Sometimes they wait patiently until one evening arrives when hiding them becomes more difficult than admitting them. And last night became that evening. One friend asked whether they believed this feeling still mattered. Your person answered with something nobody expected. If it did not matter, I would not still be thinking about what should have been said. That sentence remained in the room like an echo, because regret does not speak unless something valuable still lives in memory. Do not skip, because this is where their voice changed once again. They admitted there was one thing they had never told anyone, not even their closest friends. There were moments when they imagined what might happen if honesty arrived too late. Moments when they wondered whether silence had already changed more than they realized. Moments when they questioned whether missing the right opportunity had become the one thing they could never fix. And for the first time, their friends saw not hesitation, but honesty without protection. No performance, no carefully prepared wording, just truth. Something major is waiting for you because what happened next revealed that even your person did not expect how deeply this confession would affect them. One friend asked softly, "What if you still had a chance?" This time your person did not answer right away. They looked down, breathed out slowly and said, "Then I would not waste another moment pretending I have nothing left to admit." That sentence changed everything because now this was no longer about what had already happened. It was about what could still happen. And inside that room, everyone understood that last night was not the ending of a hidden feeling. It was the first time they finally stopped running away from it. No one in that room expected the conversation to become even deeper. But after that last sentence, your person did something that surprised even themselves. They completely stopped holding back. The atmosphere shifted again when one of their friends asked a question nobody had dared to ask before. "What made you finally admit it tonight after hiding it for so long?" Your person stayed silent for a moment, not because they did not know the answer, but because the answer carried more emotion than they wanted anyone to see. Their hands stayed still, their eyes remained lowered. Then they finally said that something happened earlier that day. A small moment, almost invisible to everyone else, but impossible for them to ignore. It was not a conversation. It was not a message. It was simply one unexpected reminder that appeared without warning and brought back everything they thought they had learned to silence. Do not skip, because this next truth changed the room again. They admitted that the reminder felt stronger than expected, because it arrived at the exact moment they were pretending they had already moved on. And that contradiction shook them. Because when someone believes they are finished with a feeling, but one ordinary second can still change their entire mood, it means something inside was never truly finished. Their friends listened even more carefully now because every sentence coming from your person sounded less like memory and more like a realization unfolding in real time. Then one friend asked softly, "Have you been carrying this every day?" Your person answered in a way no one expected. "Not every day," they said, "but often enough that I can no longer call it accidental." That answer made the room completely silent because there is a difference between remembering someone once and quietly realizing they still return to your thoughts more often than they should. Stay until the end because something important is waiting for you. And what they confessed next left even their closest friend speechless. They admitted that there were moments when they laughed with other people while part of their mind drifted somewhere else. Moments when conversations continued around them, but internally they were comparing feelings, comparing energy, comparing what felt genuine and what felt incomplete. They said this had become difficult to ignore because the comparison always led back to one place they had never fully closed. Then they revealed something they had hidden even deeper. There were nights when they almost spoke honestly to themselves but stopped because honesty would force them to admit that distance had never fully changed what still remained inside. Do not skip, because this is where their voice became even more serious. One friend finally asked, "Are you afraid of what this means?" Your person answered immediately this time, "Yes, because once I admit this completely, I cannot pretend anymore." That sentence carried real weight because everyone understood exactly what it meant. Pretending had become their protection. Distance had become their excuse. Silence had become their shield. But last night, all three began to break apart. Something major is waiting for you because the next revelation came without warning. They admitted there had been times when they heard others speak confidently about what they should do, who they should forget, and how they should move on. But none of that advice ever reached the part of them still holding unresolved feelings. Because advice can guide actions, but it cannot erase what remains emotionally unfinished. Their friend leaned forward and asked one final question. If everything became honest right now, what would be hardest to admit? This time, your person did not hesitate. They said the hardest truth was realizing they had spent too much time acting unaffected while secretly hoping clarity would arrive by itself. But clarity did not arrive quietly. It arrived last night. It arrived in that room. It arrived when they heard themselves speak words they had avoided for so long. Stay until the end, because what happened after that became the most unforgettable part of the night. A friend who had barely spoken until then looked directly at your person and said, "Then maybe what you feel has been real for much longer than you allowed yourself to admit." No one interrupted after that because suddenly the truth felt visible to everyone, and your person did not deny it. Instead, they let out a slow breath and admitted something even deeper. "Maybe I knew before tonight. I just did not want to hear myself say it." That sentence landed with incredible force because hearing truth from your own voice changes everything. Do not skip. The final moment of that night revealed the clearest sign yet. Before the conversation ended, your person looked at their friends and quietly said that if life gave them one honest opportunity again, they would choose different words than before. Not delayed words, not guarded words, different words. And everyone understood that this was no longer just reflection. It was the beginning of an inner change. Because sometimes the strongest confession is not loud. It is the quiet sentence that finally arrives after too much silence. And last night, that sentence finally arrived. Then came the part of the night nobody could have predicted, because after everything your person had already admitted, their friends believed the deepest truth had already been spoken. But they were mistaken. The room had become quiet in a different way now. Not awkward, not uncertain, but heavy with the feeling that one more sentence was still waiting to be spoken. Your person sat there as if listening to thoughts they had avoided for months, maybe even longer. And when they finally looked up again, even their expression had changed. It was the expression of someone who had stopped resisting what they already knew. One friend noticed it immediately and asked carefully, "Is there something else you still have not said?" That question remained hanging in the air for a moment. Your person did not answer quickly because this time the answer mattered more than anything spoken before. Do not skip, because what came next changed the entire meaning of that night. They admitted that the hardest part was not realizing what they felt. The hardest part was realizing how long they had delayed accepting that those feelings still carried power. They said there had been many opportunities to be honest with themselves, but every time they chose distraction, postponement, or silence, because honesty would have forced them to face what they were not ready to face. It would have forced them to confront how much one person still mattered in ways they had never completely explained. That single sentence changed the atmosphere once again, because everyone now understood this was not a sudden feeling. This had been quietly growing behind everyday life, hidden beneath routines, hidden beneath conversations, hidden even beneath laughter. Stay until the end, because something important is waiting for you. And the next confession surprised everyone in the room. Your person admitted there were times they purposely avoided certain conversations because they knew exactly where those conversations would lead. They knew one simple question from the right person could uncover everything they had tried to keep buried. And last night, that question finally arrived. One friend asked softly, "Do you think they would be shocked if they knew all this?" Your person looked down and answered with a level of honesty that no longer carried any defense. "Yes, because I never allowed them to see how much stayed with me." That answer left everyone silent once again, because now this was not only a confession, it was realization mixed with regret. They explained that some people believe silence protects their pride, But silence can also hide feelings so deeply that even the person carrying them starts pretending those feelings no longer exist. And that is exactly what happened until last night. Do not skip, because the next part revealed something even more surprising. They admitted there were moments when they heard a name, noticed something familiar, or moved through an ordinary hour that suddenly felt heavier than it should. Every time it happened, they realized that certain emotional bonds do not disappear simply because life continues moving forward. One friend asked, "So why now? Why tonight?" This time your person answered immediately, "Because tonight I became tired of listening to my own thoughts and acting as if they meant nothing." That sentence landed with unexpected strength, because honesty often begins when pretending becomes too exhausting. Something important is waiting for you, because the next truth came without any hesitation. They admitted that if someone had asked them a month earlier, they would have denied everything. A week earlier, they would have changed the topic. Even yesterday morning, they might have laughed it away. But something inside changed, and once it changed, the truth became impossible to keep hidden. Stay until the end, because this next moment became the strongest part of the entire conversation. A friend then asked the one question no one had yet said clearly. If they were standing here right now, what would you finally admit? The room became completely quiet. Your person took a breath, and, for the first time that night, their voice softened in a way that revealed everything words had not yet fully expressed. They said they would admit that some people leave a mark that time cannot easily replace. They would admit that distance taught them many lessons, but it did not erase what remained meaningful. They would admit that some unfinished emotions become clearer only after enough silence has passed. And most importantly, they would admit that pretending to be unaffected had become more difficult than speaking honestly. That answer changed everything, because now even their friends could see that what had once been hidden was no longer hidden at all. Do not skip. One final truth appeared before the night ended. Before anyone could answer, your person quietly added something almost nobody expected. "I think I waited too long to stop pretending I had already accepted."